Hogwarts Legacy is the newest addition to Harry Potter lore, and it has so many interesting plot lines and stories told within it. In this video, I'm going to go over the entire plot of Hogwarts Legacy. I put a ton of work into this video, so if you enjoy it, it would mean the world to me if you could hit that like button, and if you want, stick around and hit that subscribe button. Now getting into the plot. You start your journey with Professor Fig, a professor from Hogwarts who's been working with us on spellcasting prior to this, and we take a carriage to Hogwarts with Fig and a man named George.
Yes, sir. I'm starting school as a 5th year.
During the ride, we see that a goblin rebellion has begun, led by their leader Ranrock. We also find out that Professor Fig's late wife was onto Ranrock before she died. She told George this, and she sent him an object made of goblin metal. When we see it, we notice a glow that no one else can see, which is ancient magic, and when we hold it, it opens to reveal a key. Just then, a dragon comes after the carriage, bites it in half, and swallows and kills George right in front of us. Seeing this then allows us to see the Thestrals pulling the carriage, now having seen someone die. We and Fig jump out, grab the key that came out of the object, and it turns out to be a port key that takes us outside of the Hogwarts grounds.
We're somewhere in the Scottish Highlands.
As we walk toward ruins, we find out that Fig's late wife was searching for a special form of magic that's been lost for centuries, which is ancient magic, and we discover that Hogwarts was built by this very magic and holds much of it. When we come up on the ancient ruins, which we later find out belong to one of the keepers, we discover some ancient magic which leads us to a portal that takes us to Gringotts. They ask for the key that we acquired from the object, and they take us to Vault 12.
The instructions for Vault 12 indicate that I am to grant access to the holder of the key and then close the door. Wait!
After fighting our way through a few obstacles, we're led to a giant room with a pensieve and a memory. We watch the memory and see Percival Rackham and Charles Rookwood, two people part of the Keepers that I mentioned earlier. We watch as they create the very room we were just in, and discuss how the key we got is the beginning of a path to powerful secrets, all to be obtained through trials that only one who can see ancient magic can complete, which we of course can. After seeing the memory and on our way out of the bank, we're confronted by Ranrock, the leader of the Goblin Rebellion. He had been waiting for someone to come to this vault, knowing that those people would lead him to the secrets we were just told about. Ranrock kills the goblin that took us down, and when he threatens to hurt us, Fig engages in combat. The fight comes to a stop, however, when we're all attacked by a giant knight, and we use our ancient magic to see a way out, and this takes us to the Forbidden Forest on the Hogwarts grounds. We make our way to the start of term feast, where we meet Headmaster Phineas Nigellus Black, who is one of the worst headmasters in the history of Hogwarts.
I said, I'm sure you all have plenty to do before classes begin tomorrow.
We then meet Professor Matilda Weasley, the deputy headmistress, the same role McGonagall held, and we get sorted into our house, either Gryffindor, Ravenclaw, Hufflepuff, or Slytherin. Starting the school year, we go to a few classes, including Defense Against the Dark Arts, where we meet Leander Pruitt and Sebastian Sallow. We duel and beat Sebastian during a sort of dueling club.
Not bad for a beginner.
Later, we go to Charms, where we meet Natsai Onai, or Natty. Natty tells us that she transferred from Wagadu, the wizarding school in Africa, because her mother got a job at Hogwarts teaching divination. We then go to Hogsmeade, where we get our wand from Ollivanders, and while there, trolls in goblin armor arrive, attacking the village. During the fight, we unlock our ancient magic, which destroys the final troll. Afterwards, we meet Officer Ruth Singer.
Nerve like that? The makings of an aura, if you ask me.
As we're leaving the village, we overhear Ranrock talking with his right-hand man, Victor Rookwood, and we find out that they're after us.
All you need to know is that if you cannot get to the child, then you have no value to me.
After that, we also meet Serona Ryan, the matron of the Three Broomsticks, and see her talking to the goblin Lodgok, who appears to be on the good side. Just then, Rookwood, accompanied by Theophilus Harlow, enter the pub looking for us, but Serona and the rest of the people in the pub protect us.
Come, Theophilus. The Three Broomsticks isn't what it used to be. Let's take our galleons elsewhere.
While speaking with Fig, it becomes clear that both the trolls and the dragon were wearing goblin armor that housed ancient magic, allowing Ranrock to control the creatures. Fig tells us that he discovered a map of Hogwarts, and on it, we can see ancient magic that Fig couldn't, leading us to the library. Just as we're about to go, however, Fig gets taken away by Headmaster Black, so we decide to follow the map on our own with the help of Sebastian. While doing this, we're told that Sebastian's twin sister Anne Sallow is sick and that he's looking for a cure to fix her. We end up running into Peeves the Poltergeist, making Sebastian leave us to go after him. Meanwhile, we follow the map, go through a passageway, fight our way through, and get to to a book over a pensive. This book pours in a memory, and we see the keepers Percival and Charles, this time accompanied by Neve Fitzgerald and San Bakar. They arrive at a bare village that has no water, so Percival uses his magic to make it rain and make the bare landscape beautiful. As he did this, and as they walked away, a little girl named Isadora Morganacht watched them, accompanied by her father and her sick brother. We then see the next memory years later. Isadora is now a student at Hogwarts, and she's brought before the four keepers. We're told that she too started Hogwarts as a 5th year, just as we did, and as did Percival Rackham.
As it happens, I was also admitted to Hogwarts as a 5th year.
We find out that she too can see ancient magic just like Percival, and of course just as we can. Isadora is eager to learn to wield this power, but they tell her she must wait.
A magic this powerful can do great harm in the wrong hands. It must be wielded by a select few.
The memory ends with Isadora having a pretty evil smile on her face. When we make it back to the library, we see Sebastian getting caught because of Peeves, but he protects us from the librarian.
There was nobody else. I came alone.
We then meet Fig to show him the book the map led us to, but we realize that some of the pages are missing, meaning someone got to it before we did. We later go on a mission given to us by a portrait of a former Minister of Magic, Eltridge Diggory, to discover an unsolved murder. He thinks the book with the missing pages that we found is the key to solving this case, and we meet with his great niece and former Auror, Helen Thistlewood. We find out that the missing pages were taken by Peeves many years ago and came into the possession of a student named Richard Jackdaw. He told a girl named Anne Thisbe to come with him to follow the map on the pages, but he ended up dying that night, and Anne was accused of his murder and locked up in Azkaban. Since then, she's gone a little crazy while in prison, but Thistlewood thinks she'll talk to us because we're a student. We go to Azkaban with Thistlewood, and immediately some Dementors come after us, but Thistlewood hits them with her Patronus charm to fend them off. We then meet with Anne in her cell, and she tells us that the missing pages are in a cave near Upper Hogsfield. The encounter ends with Anne reaching beyond the bars and slashing Thistlewood. She's able to get us out of there by disapparating, and after dropping us off at Hogwarts, she disapparates away again. Later we get an owl from her brother saying that she's alright and is recovering at St. Mungo's Hospital. We then go to the cave that Anne told us about, and we meet Jackdaw's ghost, the boy that Anne was accused of killing. When we tell him about Anne's fate, Jackdaw says he'll talk to the Auror Thistlewood to clear things up. In the meantime, we go to Herbology where we meet Professor Garlick, and we go to Potions where we meet Professor Sharp. In Potions, we also meet Gareth Weasley, the nephew of Deputy Headmistress Matilda Weasley. We also go to another Defense Against the Dark Arts class where we speak with Professor Hecat, and she tells us that she's the same age as Headmaster Black, but looks older because she was wounded by time travel while working as an unspeakable in the Department of Mysteries. We also go to our first Transfiguration class taught by Professor Weasley. We then revisit Jackdaw, and he tells us how to find the missing pages from the book, which we eventually find per his instructions. We then go through some obstacles similar to the ones at Gringotts, and this leads us to a room called the Map Chamber, which has 4 massive empty portraits. In one of them, Percival Rackham appears, and he tells us to use the book, but unfortunately we don't have it with us, so we put the conversation on pause. We then discover that those ruins that we saw in the beginning of the game used to be Percival's home, and he also tells us that he's a seer. In the meantime, we have our first flying lesson where we meet Everett Clopton, and we fly around Hogwarts with him, which gets us in trouble with the flying instructor, Professor Kagawa. After this, we go to our first Care of Magical Creatures class with Professor Howen. Here we meet Poppy Sweeting, and we see her affinity for magical creatures when she stops a Slytherin student from ripping whiskers off of a Kneazle. When he makes fun of Poppy, we stand up for her.
Her name is Persephone. That's really not funny.
After that, we have our first divination class taught by Natty's mother, Professor Onai. We also go to an astronomy lesson with Professor Shaw, which takes us to the astronomy tower. Here we meet Amit the Car, who tells us that he speaks the goblin language gobbledygook. We also have our first history of magic class with the ghost professor named Binns, which we struggle to stay awake in. Not long after that, we discover the room of requirement, going in the room full of hidden things. Deke the house elf meets us in there, and he helps us set up our sort of headquarters. Later on, Sebastian shows us the Undercroft, a room hidden in the castle shown to him by his blind friend Ominous Gaunt, and he tells us about his friendship with Ominous. He tells us that he, Ominous, and his twin sister Anne were a trio of friends who spent a lot of time here. Sebastian also tells us that Ominous's family, the Gaunts, are direct descendants of Salazar Slytherin, one of the 4 founders of Hogwarts. We also find out that Sebastian's sister Anne is stuck at home with their guardian Uncle Solomon, who Sebastian isn't too fond of. When we leave the Undercroft, we're stopped by Ominous, and he is not happy that Sebastian showed this to us.
Sebastian told you, didn't he? You breathe a word about this place to anyone. Not even your precious Professor Fig will be able to help you.
Once Fig comes back, we fill him in on everything, and we take him down to the map chamber underneath Hogwarts Castle. This time we have the book with us, and when we place it down, it reveals a magical map on the floor, hence the room's name, the map chamber. Fig takes a moment to mourn his wife Miriam and the things she did to get them here.
If only you were here to see this.
This time, Rackham tells us that we have 4 trials to complete, all of which will test us and give us very valuable knowledge.
The trials were designed to ensure that the power and knowledge we have kept secret for so long does not fall into the wrong hands.
Fig, however, tells Rackham that they don't have time to wait for this because Ranrock is on the same path as us. This makes Rackham give us the first trial right now. The trial has us meet Fig at a tower just off of Hogsmeade, and this is where the trial begins. However, we discover that Ranrock's loyalists beat us there, and we have to fight our way through. Once in the tower, we discover it belonged to one of the keepers, San Bakar, and we discover another portrait of Percival Rackham who we speak to. He says that it's disquieting that Ranrock and his loyalists were able to find a tower that belonged to one of the keepers, meaning they must have inside information. Rackham then sends us down to our trial without the help of Fig. We defeat everything on our way, leading us to a giant room with a statue, and when the statue cries, the tear drops into another pensive. After it does this, an artifact appears which we collect for later. We then put our head in the pensive to watch more memories. We watch as Rackham teaches Isadora to use her ancient magic in the same village where she saw the keepers end their drought. Isadora then tells Rackham that her father is not in good shape after the death of her brother, who we of course saw was very sick in an earlier memory. She then pitches the idea of using ancient magic to take away her father's pain, but Rackham disagrees with this.
Even the most well-meaning and competent witch cannot possibly know the consequences of irrevocably manipulating it.
So I'm to watch as my father's pain destroys him.
It is not your pain to take.
We then see the next memory many years later as Rackham and Charles Rookwood welcome Isadora as a Hogwarts professor.
I was so pleased to hear that you had accepted the position of Defense Against the Dark Arts professor.
We also find out that she's been traveling for many years, and she invites the two of them, as well as the other keepers Fitzgerald and Bakar, to her house that evening, and that's where these memories end. We make our way back to the map chamber, and there another one of the keepers' portraits appear, this time Charles Rookwood. He congratulates us on making it this far, and he explains about the artifact that we collected before watching the memories.
You'll need them to complete the journey we have set forth for you. Once you have them all, we will tell you what to do with them.
We and Fig then have our own conversation, and we wonder if Charles Rookwood is related to Victor Rookwood, Ranrock's right-hand man.
The name Rookwood. Do you think that there's a connection to Victor? Perhaps.
We also bring up the goblin Lodgok that we saw Sirona Ryan speaking to earlier, and we agree that we should talk to him. After that, we have another conversation with Charles, and he tells us to look out for swirls of ancient magic, which would allow us to use ancient magic in combat, and for the rest of the game, we utilize this in fights. This then brings us to Fall at Hogwarts, which is absolutely beautiful. The first thing we do is talk to Sirona Ryan, and they get us into contact with Lodgok, hoping he can help us fight against Ranrock. Sirona then tells us about her struggles of being transgender, and how Lodgok recognized and respected this.
I hadn't seen him in years when he came in a few months ago, but he recognized me instantly, which is more than I can say for some of my own classmates. Took them a second to realize I was actually a witch, not a wizard.
We then make our way to the Hog's Head, and there we meet with the goblin Lodgok. Lodgok pitches the idea for an alliance. We go retrieve a sacred goblin relic stolen by a witch many years ago, and Lodgok uses it to repair the falling out he had with Ranrock to get back in his good graces, and in turn, he will give us inside information on his plans.
The relic could well repair the chasm between us.
The goblin leads us to the tomb where the relic is hidden, and he tells us what it is.
What precisely is the relic I'm to retrieve?
A valuable heirloom known as the Helmet of Urtgott.
We make our way through the cave, and in there we fight Inferi. However, when we get to the tomb, we see a dead Ashwinder, one of Victor Rookwood's soldiers, and we see that the helmet is gone, meaning Rookwood got there first. Lodgok is upset to hear this, as Rookwood could use this relic to get into Ranrock's good graces. This is bad because we were banking on wizard and goblin history to make their alliance rocky, but with this gesture, it could fix any tension there might be. Lodgok tells us to go after the relic before Rookwood is able to give it to Ranrock, and after fighting our way through an Ashwinder camp, we find the helmet. We then fight our way back out and return to Lodgok.
This should earn Ranrock's trust. I will take it to him immediately.
During a Care of Magical Creatures class, we're told by Professor Howen of Rookwood's Poacher Pack, who go after magical beasts in the surrounding area of Hogwarts, but she says that no one is doing anything about it. After speaking with Howen, we speak with Poppy, and she takes us to meet a hippogriff named Highwing. Poppy tells us that she rescued Highwing from poachers a few years ago, and she says that she's worried about Ranrock's poachers.
The poachers' influence is growing. I see them every day in the village, lingering, talking to people. They're up to something.
Poppy then tells us that she's going to investigate the poachers, and we ask her to tell us what she finds out. Similarly to our relationship with Poppy, Natty tells us that she wants to take Rookwood and Harlow down as well.
Men like Rookwood and Harlow are the reason my mother and I left Matabeleland. I am not going to sit by and watch them destroy my new home.
We later meet up with Gareth Weasley, and he asks us to help him with a prank of making a fizzing Wisby beverage. He tells us about a secret passage that leads to the cellar of Honeydukes in Hogsmeade, and he asks us to steal dried billywig stings from there. We enter the secret passage after getting past the statue of a one-eyed witch on the 3rd floor corridor, and we make our way down to Honeydukes. After entering the cellar and stealing the dried billywig sting, we make our way back through the secret passage and give it to Gareth. After that, we meet Sebastian in Feldcroft, his home. He tells us that the town has been overtaken by Ranrock's loyalists, and that one of them cursed his twin sister Anne.
My uncle Solomon is a former Auror and refuses to look into it, even after Anne was cursed by one of them. Possibly with a wand, no less.
Sebastian takes us to his home, and it does not go well.
There is no cure! When will you accept that?
Never!
While Sebastian and his uncle fight, Anne's curse takes over, and as Solomon takes care of Anne, he tells Sebastian to leave.
I'm sorry. Leave.
After Sebastian leaves, we talk to Anne ourselves, and she says that the curse can't be undone.
Sebastian cannot take away my pain. Perhaps you can help him to understand that.
When we tell Sebastian what his sister said, he refuses to back down and stays convinced that he can find a cure. Sebastian then takes us to Rookwood Castle in Feldcroft, which is where Anne was cursed, and he explains how it happened.
An icy voice drifted out from somewhere in the smoke. Children should be seen and not heard. A blinding blast followed. They didn't even give her a chance to run.
We decide to look around Rookwood Castle, and we realize that this was where the first memory for the Keepers and Isadora took place. We tell Sebastian about all of this, and together we follow a stairwell down to a room, and in that room, we used our ancient magic sight to see another entrance to the Undercroft, the secret room Sebastian showed us earlier. When we get there, entering back into Hogwarts, the Undercroft reveals a triptych in the wall, and this is the start of a puzzle we need to figure out. Sebastian then tells us that Ominous just discovered a secret scriptorium in the castle made by Salazar Slytherin himself, and he's going to talk to Ominous about entering it. Going back to our studies, we learn more about our professors. We learn that Professor Sharp was a former Auror who retired after losing his partner in battle. We also learn that Professor Garlick took over for her old herbology professor immediately after graduating from Hogwarts, seeing as he had a few accidents with a bowtruckle gouging his eyes out, a Chinese chomping cabbage, and venomous tentacula. We learn more about Professor Howen as well, finding out that when she was a student at Hogwarts, she discovered 7 silver alchemy eggs in a mountain, including their mother that flew over her. This was a life-changing experience for her and inspired her to teach the subject of Care of Magical Creatures. And we also learn more about Professor Kagawa, learning that she was being groomed to play on the Toyohashi Quidditch team, one of the best teams in the league, but she withdrew herself after accidentally using liquid luck before her tryout, which is of course illegal, and even though it was an accident, Kagawa burned her broom in disgrace. When talking to Serona Ryan about her progress with Lodgok, we also learn more about her past as well, and that she and Professor Garlick were good friends while at Hogwarts and remain that way even today. We then go out to catch a few magical beasts before poachers can with the help of the house elf Deke, and during this, Deke tells us that he used to be enslaved to a poacher.
That was a dark time in Deke's life. Deke found himself in service of the cruelest wizard he ever met. A nasty poacher
After rescuing a few creatures and bringing them to the room of requirement, the room listens to our needs and gives us a place to keep all of these creatures safe. We eventually meet up with Sebastian again, and we walk in on him and Ominous arguing, Ominous saying that he wouldn't help Sebastian find Slytherin's scriptorium. Sebastian then tells us about Ominous's past and how his family forced him to use the Cruciatus curse, or the torture curse on muggles when he was young, and when he refused, they used it on him instead. This agony and pain drove him to use the curse on muggles, and he still hasn't forgiven himself to this day.
I had to want to cause pain, and for that I shall never forgive myself.
After that, he wanted nothing to do with his family and started living with Sebastian and Anne in Feldcroft. After receiving an owl from Natty, we meet her at a castle that Rookwood has taken over. Natty says that she wants us to help her take Harlow and Rookwood down, and she tells us about a letter she saw Harlow get from Victor Rookwood, and she wants our help to steal that letter so she can give it to Officer Singer as proof of their wrongdoings. She also explains why she's so passionate about taking Harlow and Rookwood down.
I knew men like him in Uganda. I know how bad things can get if they are not stopped.
When we get in the castle, we unexpectedly see that Harlow has Highwing and that he's abusing her.
Highwing.
Natty tells us that the new plan is for her to get the letter and for us to free the Hippogriff. Natty gets the letter and we free both Highwing and another Hippogriff, riding on them right as Harlow shoots a killing curse at us. After flying over the grounds and landing, Natty tells us that the letter says Rookwood is looking for a phoenix and that she thinks the letter has enough evidence to incriminate him. In the meantime, we collect Highwing to make sure that she stays safe. We then go to the map chamber to meet Fig and to do our next trial. Here we discover that the castle we and Sebastian searched in Feldcroft, aka Rookwood Castle, was the former residence of the keeper Charles Rookwood.
Rookwood Castle? My former residence, yes.
And this castle is where the next trial would be. With the help of Fig, we fight our way into the castle, and once in there, we encounter Rookwood and Ranrock themselves arguing.
I allowed you to tunnel under my family home.
Allowed me? You are here only because you are descended from a keeper and may at some point inadvertently become valuable. We had an agreement. I will share with you the power that I discovered if you locate the stores of magic that are yet to be found.
In this argument, we learn that they're digging underneath the castle to find stores of magic, and Ranrock is using that store of magic to gain his power. The argument ends with Ranrock telling Rookwood to bring us, the child, to him.
Bring me the child.
Once they leave and we get deeper into the castle, we discover this store of magic that's giving Ranrock his power, and we speak with the other portrait of Charles Rookwood, who's deeply troubled by all of this. We then enter our next trial, leaving Fig behind, and once we get through it, we see another pensive. We again collect an artifact that appears, and then we watch more memories. This time we see the four keepers meet Isadora at her home, where she told them to meet her at the end of the last group of memories.
On my travels, I confirmed that which I've always believed. That we have the power to take away pain.
The keepers watch as Isadora uses her ancient magic to physically take the pain out of her father. It cures him, but the keepers are deeply disturbed by this.
What have you done?
I took his pain.
This is uncharted magic, Isadora.
The memory ends there, and when we return to the map chamber, we're introduced to the third keeper's portrait, Neve Fitzgerald. This then brings us to winter at Hogwarts, a beautiful time of year for the wonderful castle. After Sebastian failed to convince Ominous to show us Slytherin's scriptorium, we try to convince Ominous ourselves. We get Ominous to open up about his favorite aunt who went looking for the scriptorium but then vanished, and we use this to our advantage, convincing Ominous to check it out with us. We all enter looking for something to cure Anne, and Ominous is forced to use Parseltongue to get us through the first door, while we figure out puzzles to get us through the rest. This leads us to a room where we find Ominous's aunt's skeleton, as well as a journal entry of hers where she said she was trapped down here.
This is where she died. This is where we'll die.
Engraved in the ground is the word Crucio, or the torture curse, and we realize that the only way out is to use this unforgivable curse. Ominous refuses to use this power, however.
I won't do it. The Cruciatus curse is pure torture, I would know. That spells the reason I have no family left.
This is where you have three options. Don't learn the torture curse, learn it and get it cast on you, or learn it and cast it on Sebastian. Doing this opens the door and we make it to the scriptorium of Salazar Slytherin. In there is a spellbook written by Slytherin himself, which we take with us. After we get out, Ominous and Sebastian make up as Ominous thanks him for helping him discover what happened to his aunt.
I suppose after all this I am grateful to know what happened to her. Thank you.
We then meet with Natty, and she tells us that the letter we collected wasn't enough to incriminate Harlow, so instead, Natty wants to speak to Mr. Bickle, who also had evidence on Harlow. However, on arrival, we're told by his wife that Harlow killed her husband and took her son Archie. We decide to go and find Archie, and on our way, we see Thestrals, and Natty tells us that she can see them after witnessing her father die.
I still see him so clearly.
You must miss him.
My father was a wonderful man. Let us keep moving.
Her story then aligns with Archie's when we eventually find him, as he tells us that he saw Harlow kill his father.
A man called Harlow. He killed my father.
We're so sorry, Archie.
After that, we go on a quest for Deke as we go and find Deke's friend Tobbs, who used to be a slave under the same master as Deke. We enter a cave filled with spiders where Tobbs' new master forced him to go, and unfortunately, we find that Tobbs died down there. We then go back to the room of requirement to tell Deke this sad news.
Deke will miss his friend dearly, and will raise a glass to him with a heavy heart.
Later, we go to the Undercroft to meet Sebastian, and he tells us that the book we retrieved from the scriptorium spoke of a relic that reversed dark magic, which he hoped to use to heal his sister Anne. Sebastian tells us not to tell Ominous this, but Ominous unfortunately overheard all of this, leading to more fighting between the two.
You're a liar, Sebastian. I heard everything. You swore you'd never engage in anything to do with dark magic again.
When Sebastian leaves, we talk to Ominous alone.
He's as irresponsible and reckless now as his parents were years ago. It's why they died.
Ominous then tells us what happened to Sebastian's parents.
Anne and Sebastian were upstairs when it happened. They heard a sudden crash and ran downstairs, but it was too late. Their parents had crumpled to the floor. A defect with the lamp in the cellar caused the room to fill with an undetectable toxin. Sebastian and Anne were helpless. They had no magic yet.
What a horrible story.
It is.
After speaking with a Hufflepuff girl named Adelaide Oakes, we go looking for her uncle Roland Oakes, who got caught up in Ranrock's business. We eventually find him and free him, and this rewards us with valuable information. Oakes tells us what he overheard while locked up, saying that when Ranrock was just a kid, he snuck into a dragon camp every day for a while, until he finally worked up the courage to talk to the wizard in charge to ask if he could join them. He noticed that the wizard had dropped his wand, so Ranrock picked it up and handed it to him, hoping that this would be a kind gesture while introducing himself. However, the sight of a goblin with a wand sent the wizard into an instant rage, and he beat Ranrock nearly to death. Ever since, Ranrock despised wizard kind. Later, we meet up with Poppy again, and she tells us about Horntail Hall, a secret place she overheard the poachers talking about. Together, we go and see what this Horntail Hall is all about, and this leads us to one of the poachers' campsites, which surprisingly has goblin metal there, meaning the poachers teamed up with the goblins. We eventually find Horntail Hall when entering a tent, and we discover that it's a dragon fighting arena, forcing the dragons to fight one another for sport. As we explore, we see wizards abusing a chained up dragon. When we go down deeper, we find a dragon egg and we decide to take it. We then take down the wizards abusing the dragon that we saw earlier, and we release the dragon's chains, which is Goblin Silver, showing us why the goblins and poachers teamed up. More wizards then appear, but the dragon eats their leader and burns the others to death. We then help the dragon escape and in turn burn the place down. Poppy then says that the dragon egg we collected belonged to that mother dragon they just freed, but she said she didn't think the mother knew the poachers had it, otherwise she wouldn't have left the way she did. Remembering that our fellow student Amit speaks the goblin language gobbledygook, we ask him to come with us to meet Lodgok. When we meet with Lodgok, he tells us that giving Ranrock the helmet relic did not work in our favor, as he had heard it was taken from Rookwood's camp, making Ranrock put together that Lodgok had help from a witch or wizard to get it. We're then told that Ranrock has an ancestor named Bragbor, a renowned metalworker, and not that long ago, Ranrock sent Lodgok to retrieve some of Bragbor's journals. These journals told us about repositories that Bragbor had been commissioned to build for a group of witches and wizards, which turned out to be the Four Keepers as well as Isadora. These repositories were large, magically fortified receptacles crafted by goblin metal, and these journals with the Keepers' names was how Ranrock was able to find out where the ancient magic was hidden. He just went to places associated with the Four Keepers' last names.
We were to search anywhere that was connected to 5 names mentioned in the journals: Rackham, Fitzgerald, Bakar, Morganach, and Rookwood.
Amit then arrives, and it turns out he's terrible at speaking the goblin language.
Oh, Bagalio. Please do not tell me that was meant to be gobbledygook.
Perhaps my pronunciation was a bit off.
Pronunciation is not the issue. I barely recognize that as language.
Luckily, we just needed him to translate, which he was able to do. We and Amit go inside the mine, and we retrieve plans for enormous drills that Ranrock is going to build to bury his way down to the repositories. Once we exit, Amit leaves, and we speak with Lodgok, getting a huge truth bomb. It turns out that when Lodgok was sent to find the journals of Bragbor, he was surprised to find a witch there, and he was even more surprised by her reaction. She then showed him a container made of goblin metal and asked if they could work together, and this act from this witch turned out to be Miriam, Professor Fig's wife.
Miriam?
Yes. But how did you...
Professor Fig's wife.
Miriam's kind treatment of Lodgok and the way she spoke of goblin kind caught him off guard.
I'd never been treated with such respect by a witch or wizard.
Ranrock was furious when Lodgok told him about Miriam though, and not long after that, she died.
And I heard she'd been killed.
You think Ranrock murdered her?
Following that, Lodgok turned his back on Ranrock and decided to help put a stop to his plans.
If Ranrock learns of the location of that repository, I fear we shall be destined for a great war.
Lodgok then tells us that he will find out what Ranrock knows and will send us an owl. Meanwhile, Sebastian took a closer look at the triptych in the Undercroft that we discovered, and this led him to where he summoned us today. We then enter a mine where we find a part of a canvas, and we discover a chamber that was created by Isadora Morganach, hidden by ancient magic. From this chamber, we again find an entrance to the Undercroft, and while in there, we put the bit of canvas we just found into the triptych. This allows us to see the next part of this painting.
I know that coast. Ranrock has taken over a huge mine in the surrounding area.
However, Sebastian gets angry with us when we tell him about how we're working with Lodgok.
You know, goblins cursed my sister to shut her up. Said she should be seen and not heard.
You're not listening to me.
Why would I listen to someone so ignorant?
After Sebastian calmed down a bit, he told us to come to a catacomb where he believed the relic that could reverse dark magic was hidden. He of course planned to use this to heal Anne. While down there, we have the option to be taught the Imperious Curse from Sebastian, another one of the unforgivable curses, this one a spell that controls people. After making our decision, we find the relic, but it comes with a catch, as it takes a dark sacrifice to realize the relic's potential. We then discover that Ominous followed us down here and confronts us, telling Sebastian not to take the relic.
If you won't put it back, then I will.
We talk them down from fighting, and Ominous asks for help to talk sense into Sebastian, and you have the option to either side with Sebastian or Ominous. Either way though, Sebastian leaves with the relic, whether it's a compromise or by force. We all leave with Ominous being furious with Sebastian. Not long after that, we meet Poppy in Hogsmeade, and she tells us that her gran didn't send her an owl this week, which was out of character. She also tells us that she tracked down the dragon we freed, and we decide to bring its mother its egg back. Immediately after finding her, she's aggressive toward us, but Poppy's natural way with creatures makes the dragon realize we weren't a threat, and we return its egg to her. It takes the egg and flies away, leaving us and Poppy in disbelief. We then discuss how the poachers haven't come after us yet, and Poppy realizes that the reason this is because they went after her gran instead. After sending a letter, Poppy tells us that the poachers went to her gran's house and tore the place apart thinking that the egg was there. Luckily her gran was alright, but the poachers stole rare journals from the home, which they plan to use to find the secret hiding place of the Snidgets, a species of bird thought to be long extinct. Poppy then comes up with the idea of allying with the centaurs to help protect the Snidgets. When we meet the centaurs though, they aren't happy to see us.
You made a grave error in judgment in coming here, little witch.
Just as they're about to come after us, the centaur named Doran stops them, saving our lives. Poppy then tells Doran about the Snidgets, and he becomes very intrigued. He tells us to find a moonstone and place it in a henge in the forest. After finding the moonstone in a beautiful cave, and after placing it in the henge, we're visited by mooncalves who do the very rare mooncalf dance in front of us. We realize that the pattern they left is in the shape of a bird, and is a clue to the next step of finding the Snidgets. Afterwards, Poppy divulges some of her backstory, admitting that she comes from a family of poachers. She tells us that one day she watched her family capture Highwing, and when she discovered they planned to kill her, Poppy freed the hippogriff and ran away from home riding Highwing to her grand's, and she's been there ever since. Later on, we meet Natty when her mother is telling her off about a mysterious creature wandering near Hogsmeade. This makes Mrs. O'Neill ban Natty from going to the village.
But mother!
My little gazelle, you are well-intentioned, but you must not meddle in the affairs of dangerous people.
If someone had meddled in Matabeleland, father would still be with us.
When Mrs. O'Neill leaves, we ask Natty about her mother calling her Gazelle.
She called you her little gazelle. Is that a term of endearment where you're from?
It is specific to me.
She then tells us that she's an animagus that can turn into a gazelle, and we discover that this is how she was able to do so much spying on Rookwood and Harlow. This conversation ends with Natty telling us that her mother won't stop her pursuit of Rookwood and Harlow. One night, we meet Poppy and Doran tells us that everything happening right now he had foreseen in the stars. He also said that based on the pattern the Mooncalves made, he knew where the Snidgets were.
I believe the symbol created by the Mooncalves dance marks the place the Snidgets are hidden. And serendipitously, I believe that I know the very place.
We make our way through a number of puzzles, and right when we get close to the end, we discover that poachers have been following us to get to the Snidgets. We're forced to engage in an impossible battle, and just when it looks like the end, the centaurs come in to aid us in the fight, and together we take the poachers down. This act of solidarity proves to the other centaurs that humans aren't as bad as they thought, as we and Poppy fought beside them against our own kind. We then continue on and make it to the Snidget cave where we find Snidget eggs. We watch as they hatch, and we're able to witness a monumental moment in wizarding history. Doran then promises Poppy that the centaurs would guard the Snidgets and ensures that no harm will come to them.
No harm will come to them. The centaurs will see to that. You have my word.
Not long after that, Deke the house elf tells us about a phoenix that needs saving.
I wonder if it belongs to the phoenix Natty mentioned. The one Harlow and the poacher pack are after.
We fight our way through poachers, and we're able to rescue the phoenix, bringing it back to the room of requirement. As it flies around, one of its feathers fall off, and Deke catches it. In this moment, he thinks this makes up for a story he had told us about earlier. His ex-poacher master forced Deke to kill a phoenix, so now helping us save one was a really special moment for the house elf. Later on, the time had finally come to try and use the relic on Anne, and we and Sebastian make our way to Feldcroft where Anne is. However, when we get there, the town is under attack by goblins. As we fight them off, Anne collapses in pain from the curse, and a goblin goes after her. Before it gets to her though, Sebastian uses the illegal Imperious curse on him and forces the goblin to stab himself with his own sword. His uncle then arrives, and he makes Sebastian realize how badly he messed up.
Your father would be ashamed. You've gone too far, Sebastian. Stay away from her. From all of us.
When Sebastian heads back to Hogwarts, we talk to his uncle, but this does not go well. He tells us that if he catches us or Sebastian continuing down this path or using dark magic, he would alert the headmaster. After telling Sebastian this, he does not take it well.
If he thinks banishing me means I'm going to give up on Anne, he's sorely mistaken.
He tells us that he's going to send Anne a crest that meant a lot to both of them when they were young, hoping that she would get the message without their uncle intercepting it.
That's how I can reach Anne. I'll get the crest to her with plans to meet.
We go on another adventure with Natty, hoping to put a stop to Harlow, but even after saving Natty and freeing a captive of Harlow's, Officer Singer still doesn't appreciate our efforts, instead telling us to stay out of the way of her investigation. The next time we meet up with Natty, she tells us what exactly happened to her late father. She says that her father was an animagus as well, as he took the form of a giraffe, and one day when she was riding on his back, they were surprised by a group of bandits from their village. They covered their faces and shot, and Natty's father bowed his long neck to guard Natty, the father taking the bullet instead of his daughter. As he fell, he turned back into his human form, and when the bandits saw this, they turned and ran in fear.
It was all my fault.
Your fault? How so?
He died protecting me.
She then told us that they left Uganda because it was too painful to stay there. After that, we go to the map chamber to meet with Fitzgerald's portrait, and we tell her about Ranrock's drills. She tells us that the next trial takes place in the headmaster's office, where her portrait of course hangs because she's a former headmistress herself. We fill Fig in on everything with Lodgok, the drills, and the next trial. We then tell him about Lodgok's relationship with his wife Miriam, and this touches Fig very much.
She could win over almost anyone.
Fig then helps us get into the headmaster's office by giving us Polyjuice Potion to turn into Professor Black. In this form, we go to Professor Black's house elf named Scrope to get the password to his office. Scrope gives us a little bit of trouble, but we discover that the password is always pure, said in French. We make our way to the gargoyle and tell it the password, allowing us entrance to the headmaster's office. There we speak with Fitzgerald's portrait, and she tells us to pick up a book in the antechamber, and we discover it's the tale of the three brothers. We're taken inside the book for the third trial, and while avoiding death, we must find the invisibility cloak. Once we find that, we must find the Elder Wand. And finally, we must find the Resurrection Stone, completing the 3 Deathly Hallows and making us the Master of Death in this trial. We use the stone to bring Fitzgerald back to life in her tomb after her funeral, and she leads us to the next pensive. We gather yet another artifact before diving into the next memory. This time we see Fitzgerald speaking with Isadora, saying that her taking her father's pain was remarkable, but she's shocked when Isadora said she found a way to contain the strands of pain she collected.
You haven't stopped.
Isadora then says that she spoke with a goblin to conceal the pain in goblin metal, of course referring to Ranrock's ancestor Bragbor and the repositories his journal spoke of. Isadora then goes too far, taking the pain out of Fitzgerald without her permission and breathing it in to give herself more power. This deeply disturbs Fitzgerald, and when she tries to stop Isadora, she tells her off and storms away. When we return to the map chamber, we meet the 4th and final keeper, Stan Bakar. He, however, is hesitant to allow us to move on to the 4th trial, so we're forced to wait while he speaks with the other keepers. In the meantime, we meet with Natty, who opens up to us about missing her father greatly.
I miss him. I miss running with him. I miss Matibeleland. He should still be here. And it's my fault that he isn't.
The two of us then go to finish Harlow off once and for all. Natty tells us that she got a letter from Mrs. Bickle telling us that she could help us take Harlow down, but having known that the last thing Mrs. Bickle said to us was to stay away from Harlow, Natty put together that this was a trap set up by Harlow himself. We go in knowing of the trap, and this makes us come face to face with Harlow. We engage in combat with him, and after we take him down, he tries to take a cheap shot shooting the Cruciatus Curse at us. However, Natty turns into her Animagus form and jumps in front of us, taking the blast just as her father did for her. Natty is in terrible pain, and as she writhes on the ground, her mother and Officer Singer arrive. Singer finally arrests Harlow, and Natty is held by her mother after enduring the pain of the torture curse. Later that night, we visit Natty, and we say it's our fault that she got hurt. She tells us that we should not feel guilty though, as it was her choice, and in this moment, it makes her realize that she should not feel guilty for her father's death either.
Oh my! I cannot believe that it took me this long to see it. He made a choice based on instinct, my father. You, my friend, are no more to blame for my injuries today than I am to blame for my father's sacrifice years ago.
Together, we then celebrate taking Harlow down once and for all. We later meet Sebastian at the coast where the triptych led us, hoping to find the final canvas piece for the triptych. After making our way through Ranrock's loyalists, Sebastian gets frustrated with us, making us question our partnership with him.
You need to trust me, or I don't see that we can continue together.
Fine. I'm sorry. I'm letting my emotions get the better of me. And I have been for a while. I do trust you. And I don't think I can help Anne without you.
We eventually find the final canvas piece, and we find another passageway to the Undercroft. After putting the final piece of the triptych together, a pensive with Isadora's memories appears. In them, we see Isadora trying to console her broken father before she took his pain away. We then see her taking his pain away in front of the keepers, but this time from her point of view, and then we see her meeting with Ranrock's ancestor Bragbor. They discuss how well the goblin silver encasement he made worked, holding the strands of emotion, and Isadora says she needs something much bigger. When Bragbor asks why she wants to store such magic instead of use it, Isadora tells him that she only wants to store it until she can convince her colleagues of its worth.
Magic like this? A nerve, son.
The memories end there, and Sebastian is enthralled after seeing what Isadora did for her father.
I knew there was a way to help Anne.
We put together that this canvas was meant to hold Isadora, but that it can, as we saw her other portrait destroyed in an abandoned home in Feldcroft, Isadora's hometown.
I think the reason Isadora hasn't appeared is because she can't. The abandoned home in Feldcroft, the destroyed painting, it was her.
So someone destroyed a bit of enchanted canvas, but...
Sebastian then says that we need to use ancient magic the way Isadora did to cure his sister. After a lot of debating, we agree with a head nod. Later we meet Sebastian and Anne as she had received and understood the crest that Sebastian sent to her.
A lost relic from a catacomb which requires a dark sacrifice.
I know how it sounds, but if this can help you, it's worth the risk.
Anne then tells Sebastian that their uncle wants to leave Feldcroft, so they don't have much time. As she walks away, he tells us that he discovered that the relic would only work inside of the catacomb, but that they had to convince Ominous to come, otherwise Anne refused to do it. A few days later, we receive an owl from Ominous telling us that we need to meet him at the catacomb, and when we get there, Anne is tired of Sebastian who had already entered, and she decides to leave.
I'm sorry, Ominous. Make sure he's alright, will you?
We and Ominous go in to rescue Sebastian, but while down there, we realize that Sebastian is using the relic to control the Inferi we're facing, the dark twist that came with using the relic. Ominous also realizes that Anne probably went to alert Uncle Solomon, so he heads back to the castle to ensure that he gets to Professor Black before Solomon does. Meanwhile, we go further down and find Sebastian.
I've been trying to reverse the dark magic that injured Anne, but this will allow me to control it.
While we're talking though, Solomon arrives in a fit of anger, and he takes the relic and destroys it. This enrages Sebastian, and he fires a spell at his uncle. We're then forced to fight Solomon alongside Sebastian until Sebastian uses the killing curse on his uncle. Anne then arrives and hits Sebastian with a spell, making him fly back, and in her grief, she takes all the Inferi around her down. She checks on her uncle, only to see his corpse. She then destroys Slytherin's book, which Sebastian thought was his last chance at healing his sister, but she stares at him and says,
"You've made your choice."
She then disapparates away with her uncle, leaving Sebastian alone with us in the mess he had made. After we get out of the cave, we have the option of learning the killing curse from Sebastian, and if you choose to do it, he shows us that it's a lightning-shaped movement just like Harry's scar. Later on, we meet Sebastian and Ominous in the Undercroft, and Ominous says that Anne is devastated as she just buried her uncle alone. He then tells Sebastian that Anne is thinking about turning him in, which shocks Sebastian. When we speak alone with Sebastian, he shows remorse for his actions.
I regret everything I did. I know what I did was wrong.
We then speak to Ominous, and we have the choice to either turn Sebastian in or to not turn him in. If we turn him in, we later find out that he is expelled from Hogwarts and that he goes before the Ministry of Magic. But if you don't turn him in, he stays at school but still has a lot of remorse for what he's done. However, even though he got away with murder, he loses Anne as she refuses to even see Sebastian.
I think I've lost my sister, my twin, forever. She refuses to even see me.
Not long after that, we go to the mines to meet Lodgok, but while down there, we see Ranrock addressing his loyalists, saying that another drill was complete.
Another drill is complete. The wizarding world will crumble.
Our new mission becomes to destroy the drills they have, and we do just that by making the mines collapse on them. Ranrock himself then confronts us, and as he does, Rookwood brings Lodgok forward, saying he found him lurking outside, as Lodgok was of course waiting for us. Here we discover that Ranrock and Lodgok are brothers.
Come to make amends, little brother.
Then when Ranrock finds out that Lodgok was hiding Bragbor's final journal from him, he gets angry and blasts his brother back. Ranrock lectures his brother, saying that Miriam didn't trust him, she just wanted to use him like all wizard kind. And now that he had the journal, he says he doesn't need any of them, Lodgok, Rookwood, or us. Lodgok then turns to us and says he was bringing the journal to us.
I was bringing it to you.
Lodgok is then blasted by his brother, killing him instantly. Rookwood takes this chance to cast the killing curse at Ranrock, but he dodges it, and just as Ranrock readies his attack, the mine collapsing distracts him. We run for it and make it out of the mine just in time. We decide to tell the keepers that Ranrock has the journal, meaning he has the location of the final repository. This news troubles them, saying that after obliviating Bragbor, they did not expect him to have journals that told his story, nor that Isadora left behind memories of her own either. All of this culminates to them allowing us to do the final trial. We meet Fig at the location of the trial, which involves subduing a Graphorn, the Lord of the Shore. After gaining its trust, we hop on the creature's back and ride it to the final trial. Its roar triggers the tomb opening, and when we enter, we find Bakar's portrait and the pensive. We gather the final artifact above the pensive, and we dive into the memory. It starts with Bakar going to Isadora's house, and when she doesn't answer, he enters on his own. When he does, he finds something very disturbing. When Isadora's father turns to him, he realizes that he's stripped of not just his pain, but all emotion. Bakar goes to Percival, and he tells him that Isadora has been wielding this magic on students.
I've just learned that she has been wielding that magic on students.
The two of them gather Fitzgerald and Rookwood, and together, the keepers confront Isadora. We see that the final repository is below Hogwarts Castle, and as the keepers enter, they see a student walking away from Isadora, which deeply disturbs them. They tell the student to return to their common room, and together they approach Isadora, who has clearly inhaled so much magical pain that it altered her appearance.
Students, Isadora.
Everyone feels pain.
Isadora accuses the keepers of keeping too many secrets about ancient magic, and the four of them raise their wands at her.
Isadora, set down your wand.
A duel breaks out, and Isadora's power is too much, instantly knocking everyone but Rackham back, and actually knocking Fitzgerald out. The two of them then start to duel, and Rookwood joins Rackham in the fight. However, Bakar, realizing that she was too powerful for them, he uses the unforgivable killing curse on her. Bakar and Rookwood check on Fitzgerald to make sure she's alive. Meanwhile, Rackham goes to Isadora's body and picks up her wand. After seeing these memories, we return to the map chamber, and the keepers tell us that they could not destroy the strands of emotion that Isadora had taken from people, so instead they decided to keep them safe. This then explains why the four of them became keepers.
Hence, we became keepers. Keepers of an unfathomable secret. We knew that someday, one with the ability to see traces of ancient magic might be seduced by its power. We built the trials to lead that person to us.
The keepers then tell us that we must forge a special wand from all of the artifacts we collected before seeing each memory, so we head to Ollivander's hoping that he'll craft it for us. Ollivander does his thing and makes the powerful wand that the keepers asked us to make.
I should warn you, I've never seen a wand like this before.
However, as we leave the shop, we're confronted by Victor Rookwood, and he proposes that we work together now that Ranrock turned on him, but we refuse. Victor Rookwood then gets angry, saying that the repository is his birthright.
That repository is my birthright!
Charles Rookwood wouldn't have wanted you near it.
Rookwood then says a line that rings a bell.
I've always said, children should be seen and not heard.
The same line said before Anne was cursed, meaning it was Rookwood who cursed Anne and not a goblin after all. Someone then comes up behind us and disapparates us away to an Ashwinder camp. After a long hard fight, and after he shoots the killing curse at us, we prove that we're more powerful and finally take Rookwood down once and for all. We then meet the keepers, now possessing the special wand, and each one says their part before sending us on their way.
We leave our legacy in your hands.
The map on the floor then turns to liquid and disappears to reveal a staircase and a doorway. Together, we and Fig make our way down, and we're immediately met by one of Ranrock's drills. We're then met by an army of goblins and trolls, all wielding goblin metal, and just as it seems too much, help arrives in the form of the Hogwarts professors. Professors Onai, Hecat, Ronan, Sharp, and Weasley come ready to fight, and a massive battle breaks out. We and Fig make our way through the fight, and during this, Sharp knocks a troll out, and as it falls, it takes down a pillar, and when it looks like it's going to crush us, Professor Weasley catches it just in time. She then uses the pillar to make a bridge for us to cross, and we bid the professors that came to our rescue farewell for now. We're then faced by giant knights, by far the biggest ones we've seen so far, and we realize that we're able to control them when we pull out the special wand that Ollivander made for us. The knights do our bidding and open the doorway for us, and we and Fig follow the pathway to the repository where Isadora stored the magical pain. Fig then asks us what we plan to do with the power now that we're here, giving us the option to either keep it contained as the keepers wanted, or to open it and consume the power for ourselves. Either way, Ranrock then appears, and he pulls out Miriam's wand, admitting that he was the one who killed her. This outrages Fig, and he takes a shot at Ranrock, but he blocks it. Ranrock then shoots out a spell that hits the repository, opening it up and giving him all the power inside. He becomes a massive entity and takes part of the cavern down, which makes Fig fall. Not knowing what happened to Fig, we fight Ranrock using the special wand and our ancient magic, and after a long fight, we take him down to his normal goblin form. Soon after that, the leader of the Goblin Rebellion passes away. We pick up Miriam's wand, but soon we realize that there's more danger as we have to use our special wand to stop the cavern from collapsing, and just as it becomes too much, a very injured Fig arrives to help, and he holds the cavern up, telling us to contain the magic. With great difficulty, we do just that, aided by a little pep talk from Professor Fig. We successfully contain the magic, but as we turn, Fig is on the ground very injured.
Miriam.
We then pull out Miriam's wand, which makes him smile, and he tells us that Miriam would have loved us.
Miriam would have loved you, my young friend. The wizarding world could not be in more capable hands.
With those final words, the life in Fig fades away. At the next feast, Fig is remembered by all staff and students. Headmaster Black starts this remembrance off, but when he does a bad job, Professor Weasley takes over and gives Fig a proper send-off.
Those that knew him best will agree that we must now honor him as only Hogwarts can, by wisely, resourcefully, justly, and bravely facing all that lies ahead.
Everybody then toasts to the late Professor Fig in a fitting remembrance for an amazing man. Afterwards, we tell Sebastian the truth of who cursed Anne.
What are you saying? It wasn't one of Ranrock's loyalists who cursed Anne. It was Rookwood.
Sebastian doesn't take this well at first, as he had dedicated so much hate to the goblins that he thought went after his sister, when really it was another wizard. Following Fig's death, we meet with Professor Weasley, who consoles us about it.
But I can assure you that he would want us to press on, and that he would rest easy knowing that the future of the wizarding world is in hands like yours.
Thank you, Professor.
We wrap the school year up with final exams in Charms, Care of Magical Creatures where we study a unicorn, Defense Against the Dark Arts where we face a boggart, and watch Natty turn one of the bandits that killed her father into a cat, and we watch as everybody we met this year enters the Great Hall for the end of term feast. Right before Professor Black announces the winner of that year's House Cup, Professor Weasley cuts him off and she gives us 100 points for whatever house we're in.
One particular student's heroism during the attack on Hogwarts, not to mention the level to which they have excelled in their coursework, as a new student, no less. Well, it would seem that it certainly merits, I'd say, 100 points to their house.
Thus winning the cup for our house. Everybody you know in your house then circles you as they celebrate the victory. As fireworks fill the Great Hall, that is where the story of Hogwarts Legacy ends. Thank you so much for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. You can follow me on Instagram to see more of my personal life, like my cute dog Loki, and some behind the scenes movie flame stuff. I also do similar content on TikTok and Twitter that I do here on this channel, so if you like what I do here, check them out. All the handles are right below me, and links are in the description. Over here are my wonderful patrons. If you want to be featured on the next video, plus get a few other perks, become a patron today. As always, if you liked the video, hit that like button and subscribe, and look out for more great movie flame videos on the way.